The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to John. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." The Gospel of the Lord. Do you ever wonder what you would do without the MapQuest or Waze or Google Map applications, map apps on your cell phone? All I have to do is type in where I am going, and voila, the map appears, along with a traffic report, an estimated time of arrival, and an invisible voice guides me to my destination. If only there was a compass or a map app for every decision I have to make, like where to turn when a relationship blows up, or how to navigate a stressful medical crisis, or what to do when my job hits a dead end. It would be nice to have voices around to guide my way then. But what if we do? What if we do have voices helping us find our way? Today, All Saints' Day suggests that they are here for us if we're listening, and that they just might offer us a tip or two along the highway of life. Like the saints of the past, we may not think of them often or imagine that they offer much for us in these challenging times, but research begs to differ. Though it is important to appreciate the present, to stop and smell the roses, and to stay and live in the moment, and although it is important to look to the future with hope, to work hard, to set goals, to plan, research shows that awareness of the present and the future are not the most important predictors of a satisfying, meaningful life. Instead, extensive studies show that our most important orientation toward time is a positive appreciation of the past. The more we savor memories of relationships and let go of grudges, the more we connect to our roots and let go of our forebears' failings, the more we treasure their legacy and let go of the myth that we are self-made, the stronger our sense of a positive past, the better grounded and centered we will be. In fact, the more crazy and stressful our circumstances, the more the past can help us to navigate our way through them. By looking outwards and backwards to our ancestors in the faith, we gather strength for moving ahead and forward. It helps us to see what we are made of. Like Abraham, who was called out by God from his settled life and existence and had no clue where he was going. Time after time, he was tested and challenged. He visited the promised land, but he couldn't settle in. He was given a wife, Sarah, but she was barren. And although he was not perfect, Abraham kept looking back to the promises of God, kept engaging with God, kept staying faithful to God. Or Moses, who was called out to stand up against Pharaoh and lead his people to freedom. His life was threatened. His people were afraid and questioning. And when they built the golden calf, well, Moses thought that the whole darn mission had gone south right there. And though he wasn't perfect, Moses kept turning to God, kept listening to God, in order for his people to become the faithful community they were meant to be. There are even some not-so-saintly saints, like the arrogant Italian playboy who scandalized and embarrassed his family and then gave everything up for God. Today we know him as none other than St. Francis. And there are more. There are modern-day saints, some well-known, others not so much. We think of Martin Luther King Jr. We think of Archbishop Oscar Romero or Mother Teresa. Imperfect people, yes, but people who nonetheless said yes when God called them out. All this matters because we are made of the same stuff, and in the same way we find our way forward. By engaging with God, by relying on God's promises, by listening to God, by trying to be a faithful community, by uniting our divisions for God's greater will for the common good, by seeking God's glory. And it isn't just those famous saints who inspire us. There are the personal ones that we have all known and still know. Ethel Langley, a saint with whom I shared a birthday. Connie Van Wyck and her passion for newspaper clippings. It became an entire exhibit at USC's Doheny Library, and it will continue to inform others for years and years to come. And I will never be able to see anyone watering anything on St. George's campus and not think of Irene Bauer. It reminds me of her quiet resolve, of the courage and the faith she had, and that gives me the courage and the faith to keep going. And then there are those who make it easier for us to see God, to believe in God, like my friend Beth, who died last year. Beth had fought cancer for 20 years. A week after she died, I received a gift in the mail from her. It was just so Beth. She had had her sister mail it to me. It was a candle to light my way, she said in the card that came with the package. On her deathbed, she wrote, "I'll be sending you love across the veil." I believe it. I feel it. And then there is my husband, Keith, who this week dressed up as Superman, only with Hawaiian shorts pulled up over the costume. Not quite sure what that all meant, but that was his interpretation. He did it for the Halloween parade at St. Mark's Episcopal Church and Preschool, where he serves. He is probably the greatest saint in my life because he shows me God all the time. And at St. Mark's, there is this other wonderful tradition that also shows me God, and it shows me the communion of saints. It's a wonderful tradition that they use to help celebrate the graduating 8th graders. And to me, it's like a map app to the company of heaven, to the glory of God, and a glimpse of the communion of saints. It's called the Ride Around. And it is probably a totally bewildering custom to anyone who's never seen it before and who doesn't know the tradition. But every spring, members of the 8th grade graduating class, the day before they graduate, they get to dress up in their cool clothes, not their school uniforms, right? And then they all pile into a really cool car, usually rented by one of the parents. And so there's this whole parade of these cool cars, and the kids are all piled in. And then they drive around this huge circular driveway that extends from the very front of the church and school lot, to the very back of the property. And they do this 3 times while the rest of us, the parents, the teachers, the siblings, the school support staff, just other people, parishioners from the church, and even people like me, the tangential people to this place, we all gather around and we applaud and cheer for them as they make their way around 3 times. And we send them on their way to the next great adventure of their lives. That's how I envision the communion of saints, whose voices we sometimes hear, whose names may be known only to us, who at this very moment, I believe, are standing and applauding us along our way to our next great adventure together. And I hope that you will say their names with me in a few moments when we read together all the names of those we have loved but see no longer, all those whom we remember today, those who have made a difference in our lives and who remind us to live for God and to do something that in the end matters. Because in the end, I suppose that we could find our way forward on our own. I suppose we could be, like so many people these days say they are, spiritual but not religious. I suppose we could be self-made and self-taught. We could wander in the wilderness of our own impulses or get lost in the labyrinth of our endless options. But why would we want to? Why in heaven's name would we want to? The church, imperfect as we may be, imperfect as it may be, is Christ's gift to us. Christ's gift of community, not just this community right in front of us today, but the whole communion of saints who have gone on before us. The communion of saints who will come after us. In community, we are nurtured and transformed and sent out into the world to serve and then welcomed home again. In the community of the church, we learn what it means to follow Jesus with humility and with love. We are saints. That fact is made real in baptism. A saint is not someone who by his or her own design or reason or strength has achieved greatness. Rather, a saint is someone whom God has declared a saint by grace in baptism. When we are baptized into Jesus Christ, we are given a brand new view of reality. It is not what the world calls reality. The world tells us that only the rich, only the self-satisfied, only the happy, and only the popular are those who are blessed. But nonsense, says Jesus. You are blessed because I say you are blessed. You are blessed no matter what conditions prevail in your life, because it is God and not the world who has the final word about who you are. You are baptized. You are saints. May your lives reflect this reality today and every day. And that is the good news we celebrate today. It is our own map app to all the saints on earth and all the saints in heaven, and with all the saints who have gone before us and all the saints who will come after us. We rejoice this day in the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. We rejoice that God has called us out, called us to sainthood, and for having given us a totally new way of looking at life, a way, it turns out, is the only real way. Amen.